Okay, here we are with my mother, Marian Minor Moore, which is short for Louisa Marian Minor Moore. And she is the 7th youngest of the 8 cousins. And today is May 26, 2024. And I'm here with Mom because I have asked her to tell us some memories of Woodlands in advance of the upcoming Woodlands reunion. So can you tell us, Mom, what some of your earliest memories are of Woodlands?
Well, I've been going to Woodlands ever since I was a very small tot, about maybe 3 years old. I have pictures of me at Woodlands at that early age. So my memories go way back. They always felt very fortunate to have a place like Woodlands to go to on vacation. It was really fun for our family. We went almost every August after my dad had finished his tutoring, his apple picking, his apple selling, all the work that had to be done around the house. We finally had some free time together, and we were able to stay at the house for free, which was nice because we couldn't afford to go to a fancier place most of the time. It was at vacation times. And I just loved being with my family when they didn't have a lot of pressures from other places, things to do. And I had almost their full attention. That was fun. And to be able to go to this place that had so much history of my mother's family was a real treat. I loved to hear my mother tell stories about her life there. She was born there, and so she had lots of memories of the family and good times there.
Here's a question for you. Where were babies likely to be born? Like what room in the house? Or do you have any idea?
In a bedroom in the house.
One of the bedrooms upstairs?
If there was warning.
Mm-hmm. And which of the rooms was her bedroom? Do you know?
Our bedroom.
Your mother's bedroom.
I don't know about Mother. I don't remember asking her that question. When we went down to visit, we always stayed in the front bedroom on the right as you were looking out from the house. It was kind of the blue room at that time, although it didn't have any curtains or anything. Bedspread was about all. And so our family stayed there. As the boys got older, they moved to either the back bedroom, where customarily a lot of boys stayed, or one of the small bedrooms that one of the elderly uncles had stayed in. As I grew older, I moved to one of those bedrooms too, and stayed by myself. And so we were kind of spread around the house as we got older.
And who else was in the house when you were staying there? Who did you see?
Well, different people came and went. The custom was for the uncles who lived in Atlanta and worked there to come up on the weekends. The rest of us stayed during the week. It was a wonderful together time for family. We could all be together. Most people had time off during the August, and so we had a good time just getting to know each other, and that was really fun for me. I don't know which was more fun, being able to see this house that was almost 100 years old, or the people who are part of our whole family tree. We actually had a picture of a family tree to look at, and the names on the branches. I was proud to see my name on one of the branches. It was fun to look at this tree that went all the way back to when our family first came over from England and France. And
Where was that tree?
I guess it must have been framed and was probably in the library, or either that or rolled up, and we unrolled it to look at it. But it was fun to look at that and see how the family grew and evolved. So one of my memories of Woodlands was to see all those relatives in person, to hear about their past, to hear about the building of the house. It was started, it was started in 1847, I believe. The family moved in 1850, and so it was preceded the Civil War, and the Civil War came along in the 1860s, and so anyway, we had my grandfather's old letters that he wrote at the time the house was built, and knew a lot of facts from those letters. It was fun to read those and to feel a part of things from back then.
What did a typical day in August at Woodlands look like for you? How would you spend your time?
Oh, goodness. There was always something to do. Members of my family were creative and thinking things up, like trips to mountains. We did mountain climbing. We did wading in creeks. Those are some of my most treasured memories. We played games together. One of my aunts was very creative in thinking up and leading games, and she was the life of the party every night that we were there in the house.
Which aunt was that?
Aunt Margaret.
And who did she belong to? Which side?
She was Uncle Mart's wife.
Oh, okay.
So that took up some time in the evening. Some of their children had put together a little show called the Dr. Doolittle Show, where they their hands were their feet, and it wasn't a
They put on a little performance. Yeah, so I remember seeing that. You would put curtains up in the doorway, and they did some of that in recent reunions, like in the last 20 or 30 years, when they would recreate that for us. That was pretty special.
the picture just went dim.
Oh, there we go. So, Howie and Mac were part of building a golf course on the grounds, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell
Golf
me about?
course.
Yeah, golf course.
The golf course was built by my uncles, I think, and it was there when we got there.
Oh, it was already there. Okay.
They played on it. I never played on it because I didn't play golf.
Yeah.
I think I took a few swings at the ball from the first tee and quit. But they also had a tennis court, bowling lanes.
Where were the bowling lanes?
Pitching.
Where were the bowling lanes?
Well, around some.
Just on the grounds outside someplace?
Yeah.
And there was a swimming hole, a swimming pond?
Someone had built a swimming hole by digging out the red clay and filling it with water. I think I swam in that one time and came out covered with red. And thought that was not a whole lot of fun. We sort of divided into two groups for activities. There was an older group, which was Howard, Mac, Catherine, Mary Louise, and Jane. And then the younger kids were John and me, which we were the same age. And John's sister Ann was younger. Paige Griffin lived at Blythewood, which was another house in the area, and he was a distant relative of the Johnston family, I believe, were the ones that built Blythewood. And he was sometimes there when we were there. So we were the younger contingent, and John was kind of the leader of the pack. He had a lot of ideas for puppet shows, and he had fixed up one of the cabins on the place for kind of like a playhouse. Later it became his family home, but our grandmother gave it to him and to do with as he wanted. He was kind of the instigator of the activities we did, exploring the property. Oh, goodness, it was just a lot of fun.
Didn't you say you used to play under the pine trees, make little sort of doll furniture, or like play with the acorns?
My mother and I, it was a treasured time for me with my mother having enough time to spend just with me. And the smell of Georgia pines still reminds me of those days and what fun it was.
And did you help out with food preparation, or were there servants or employees that...
We had a black lady named Lucy who did the cooking and serving of the meals. My grandmother was the matriarch of the place. She was ruled kind of like a dictator.
That's your mother's
was
mother.
My mother's
mother.
She was the one that made sure meals were planned and shopping was planned. Her oldest daughter, Susan, was really the workhorse. She took orders well, and I don't know whether she helped with the cooking or not. I have a picture of my grandmother making a peach pie sitting there in the room next to the pantry, peeling peaches. there were certain things that we all pitched in on. But Lucy, I think, did most of the actual cooking. The meals were very nice. They were full of fresh fruits and vegetables. And
Was there a vegetable garden on the property?
yeah, it grew tomatoes and some corn for us. Let's see, we had milk straight from the cow. When my mother would let me drink it, she was always a little bit concerned about non-pasteurized milk.
Mm-hmm.
But they used that to make what they call clabber, which is cow's milk that had turned, and we had that for dessert with brown sugar on it lots of times.
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Susan was a real workhorse, and she did, I guess, most of the gardening. Although we did have employ a man named Henry who lived on the property, and he helped with the heavy kinds of work. John followed Henry around like a puppy dog and learned a lot of the history of the place from Henry.
Huh.
He wrote about it in his books, some of his books that he wrote.
Did you spend time in the schoolhouse? There was a building that was a schoolhouse. Uh-huh.
Not at the time that I was there. It had been moved. I just read that the other day. Moved and attached to Woodlands, and became what they call the billiard room, a billiard table, and I was in that room, but never in an actual school setting.
Were there parties then in the billiard room? Was there games or billiard games?
We gathered there sometimes, and I did take a few lessons from older people. Billiards, but I was not good at it.
What did you do on rainy days?
Rainy days were fun. We'd gather, some of us in the parlor, and play cards, solitaire, poker, look at old pictures. We loved to get out the old albums and framed pictures of our ancestors and hear stories from the other people about them. And that was a lot of fun. Just being with family was great for me.
And that's where the stereopticons came out, right? You got to look at the...
It was a stereopticon was a machine that took two pictures and melded them together so they were
So it looked like 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most of all, I enjoyed going on little trips, which we did a lot of. And it was such a beautiful setting in the foothills of the Smokies, and lots of places to go. The people who lived there the most knew where to go, so they'd take us to places to go, wading, swimming, picnicking.
And did your dad go on those excursions? Did he drive the family? Your dad? Mm-hmm.
He was one of the drivers. Mm-hmm. I think he really enjoyed driving around. It was interesting. Both my parents grew up in mountain areas. My mother in the summers, and my dad all year round. And so they had that in common. And they love to go on the trips too. To get to the top of the mountain and see the view, the pictures dim again. And anyway, that was fun for everyone, just to be in that environment. And coming from flat Indiana, we appreciated
the change of
rolling
scenery.
hills.
How long was the drive from Indianapolis to Woodlands?
We took 2 days to do it.
Uh-huh. Did you spend time up in the attic? That was quite a place the last time I was there.
I was only there a couple of times. Mostly I saw things that had been drawn out of the attic by other people. And of course that's where they found the diaries and the letters, the old things. They were always finding new things in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
It was the family saved everything, and a lot of it ended up in the attic.
Mm-hmm. And you said there were various attempts to make money on this property, especially after the Civil War. It was particularly difficult to make a living on the land. But what did they try?
Eventually, during the war, they evacuated Savannah, where my great-grandfather's cotton plantation was. He had to give it up and eventually sold it because he couldn't make a living off of it with no Negroes left, and so there was nobody to work the fields. And that was kind of a hard time for them because they desperately wanted to keep Woodlands going and keep it a money-making place, but it was harder after the war. They hired some white people to work the land and tried raising corn, sorghum, sheep. At one time were a big project. He tried all sorts of things. I think none of them were terribly successful, but they did manage to keep the place going. And then when my generation came along, John had come back from the service, and he made his home there and put a lot of his own money into helping keep it up. And he was a big instigator of projects to keep the house in shape and going. The biggest thing that happened along those lines was John's connection with movie people in Hollywood. I'm not sure how he got connected with them, but he did it anyway. And so anyway, he helped instigate 2 movies that were made at Woodlands, and they were not particularly successful. Popularity-wise.
Stars and Bars and Wanderlust, right? Yeah.
But the movie people were so appreciative of being able to use the property and to make films there that they did a lot of repair work and painting and curtains and all sorts of things to make the place look good again. And the first time I went back, I've forgotten now where the first time, when the first time was, but it was, I think after we got married and we went back, and I was surprised at how beautiful the house looked and how pretty the grounds were, and all that hard work was done by the family.
And that house didn't have electricity at that time?
Right,
When did they?
right. There was some argument about that. There were certain people who were afraid of electricity. They thought it attracted lightning or something. There were a lot of arguments about it. There never was electricity on the second floor, just the first, finally. They finally put a furnace in at a time when the family was living there all year round, and they just couldn't keep the place warm enough with fireplaces. So they put a furnace in. I guess it worked fine for a while.
And how about, was there a well for water?
A well. Yeah.
And I think Howie said they had a bucket with some holes in it, and you would stand under it to take a shower. He remembered that.
It was cold showers or nothing.
And there were things buried in the ground, preserved in the ground, is that right? Like with ice? Did somebody dig a hole in the backyard to preserve food year round? Do you remember anything about that? About ice or food preservation?
Ice in the well, you mean?
In a deep hole in the ground. I thought there was a way to make things cold. Refrigeration.
Well, it was just cooler there, away from the sun.
Okay.
I don't know much about that.
Maybe somebody else knows the details of that. Were there ever any fires? Any lamps that got away from people, or fires in fireplaces that
No, we were
burned things?
blessed with a lack of fires. I was always grateful that the place survived the elements.
And do you have memories of that wisteria vine being there all the time? All the time you were there?
All the time I was there. Yeah. I was reading the other day in one of the accounts of building the house. At some point, someone sent them wisteria plants and requested that they plant it at a certain place on the porch where it would grow and spread over the front porch. And it did a beautiful job.
It sure did.
Hard to imagine the place without it.
Were there any weddings at Woodlands that you recall?
There have been a number of weddings there. I think it's mostly John's family that has used it for entertaining. And I don't remember a specific wedding that was there. I have a picture of my grandmother and her husband at their anniversary. Must have been 50th anniversary, something like that. And that's interesting to look at with clothing. And I forgot to mention that they did save a lot of old dresses that our ancestors wore, and my cousins who were slimmer than I was put them on and had their pictures taken. I never was able to squeeze into one.
Do you remember
ladies were slim
slim
and
back then?
petite
Yes.
in those days.
Do you remember any babies in that baby carriage? That big, beautiful baby carriage?
Yeah. Kimberly.
Kimberly, yes, I
Kimberly
guess we
was
did put her in there.
in something.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know much about the babies.
Well, thanks for telling all these stories. I think people will really enjoy hearing your perspective on Woodlands. It still is a treasure that
Well,
has stood the test of time.
a great place to remember,
Yeah.
and I'm just so glad I had that
Yes.
opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much.